Again, aren't you impressed with us? I am. I'm really impressed. I'm really proud of our team. I'm really a big applause to the team actually, to the volunteers who have been making this, like today, possible. All the sessions and everything is going like on the dot. And now we are ready for this session again, which was supposed to be at 12:15, and it's happening at 12:15. So here we go with the sessions. It's Geographies of Reading, Contexting the Indian Reader. We have Vivek Jadeja, Aditi Maheshwari, R. Sivapriya, Paul Zamayaki, and Meeta Kapoor will be conversing with them. Meeta Kapoor is the founder and CEO of Sehai, India's leading literary consultancy. She also creates and produces literary festivals and book reading events. And she's also a writer. She often writes for various magazines and newspapers. So off to the writers here on the stage. Please welcome all our authors here on the stage with a big applause. They are also braving the rain and the traffic and are here for our session very much in time. Thank you so very much.
This was starting when? Chicken. The bookstore I worked at, we started in 1953, so we're slightly younger than you.
I think I'll have to say one very warm good morning on a wintry, chilly morning like this. And I have to ditto Mani on what she was saying. I think they've done a stupendous job to keep the venue alive, to have all of us back here, because I understand the pain of a festival producer, and I understand what this team has gone through since 4 in the morning since it began raining. You have no idea what it takes to get the whole thing together again. So, you know, we probably need to give them a standing ovation at the end of the session,
yes,
which we will do, so please don't forget if I forget. I'm here to do the session on the geography of readership, contexting the Indian reader. And we have with us today Paul Yamazaki, who has a store in SFO called City Lights. Aditi Maheshwari, who is a publisher from Vani. We have Vivek, and he says I must not introduce him from Flipkart, but I will, just to be nasty. Come on, one is allowed. Okay? I was nice to you yesterday. And we have with us Shivapriya from Penguin. So we have a good mix of people. Please grill them with your questions when I let you. So we are talking about who's reading what and how, and God save you if you don't read at all, because that is one thing that you're missing out on. We're looking at how the readership population is changing in India, because it's changing very fast, because we are all going through such fast-paced changes anyways, because of the advent of the way technology is moving and making us move ahead, we're also looking at the kind of books that are being published, and my first thing is, my first focus would be what is a publisher doing to market that book, and does that really influence the choice of the readers? So I'm going to ask Shiva Priya to give her rejoinder on this and give her response on what is it that the publisher does, or maybe does not do.
Thank you, Nita. That was a good question to start. What I do in Penguin is I work on two specific lists: the Penguin Classics and translations from contemporary texts in Indian languages. With the Penguin Classics, what we do is bring modern masters and classical texts into English from different languages of India. And in contemporary translations, what we want to do in fiction is publish the best Indian fiction. And if you want to publish the best Indian fiction, you should be publishing from all the languages of India. I don't think we manage to do all the languages, but we do manage to do at least translations from half a dozen Indian languages, and it should grow. So the lists that I publish are for a very literary readership. In the years that I've worked in Penguin, in trade publishing, I don't think the composition or the percentage of readership has changed. I think we've become more daring about publishing. Our classics list is growing in a very sustained fashion. And in contemporary translations, I think we've become much more smarter about packaging and about publicity. I think readership in that has grown a little more, but not, it's only marginal, but not hugely. So I think if there's been a change in readership, it has not been in the very literary material that I do.
I have a slightly different opinion on this, because everybody says nobody's reading literary fiction. We'll set out a print run of maybe 3,000 or 4,000 copies, which is huge for literary fiction. So when you compare the kind of sales figures, there is still that paradox. So are you doing anything specific or special to make sure that your sales figures for literary fiction increases?
It hasn't really changed for classics, I must say. The really popular texts sell, for example, Arthashastra or the Ramayana would sell, but the smaller texts really don't. They still sell in much smaller numbers. But with contemporary translations, it has changed to an extent, and that has been because of the kind of publicity that we do and the kind of packaging that we do. It has changed, and it's reached the kind of numbers that original English fiction sells.
Right.
There's still a lot of work to be done.
I'm sure there's always work to be done, and we do have to applaud the work that's been put in by her on translations, because there's some fantastic translations coming out from Penguin. And if you haven't picked them up, I'm sure they're all available here. It's always good for an agent to plug books, so please, I'm doing it shamelessly. Vivek, I want to ask you, how are readers accessing their material now? Given that the internet has spawned a subculture, so we've got e-books being sold, we're also shopping online for printed books. We are looking at readers reading online. There's a whole culture of blogging now. So there are many, many more choices of accessing and what you want to read and how you want to read them. So with your experience as a blogger, as well as an online retail outlet, how are you watching this how would you map the way the readership profile in India is changing?
So I think it's very strange. You cannot context the reader. You cannot put a framework around them and say, this is what you're reading, this is what you're buying, this is what you're interested in. I think most of the trends are through online mediums. It is about Twitter, Facebook, recommendations, reading blogs, reading reviews. They get influenced by reviews, but I don't know to what extent they go and buy the book. I would think it's more the culture of mass paperbacks, which we see also a lot emerging than you rightly said, literary fiction. So on one hand, I would say people are reading more, but at the same time, what is being read cannot be judged or decided, or you cannot tell them that read this or read that. At the end of the day, a reader will read what he or she wants to.
Yeah, but as an online retailer, don't you guys have some system of doing surveys of what readers are buying? And because Amazon does that, they do a profiling of readership. So
Sure.
don't you have a system of profiling?
So we do a profiling, and that's exactly what I'm saying. So when it comes to literary fiction, translations, knowing world literature, that percentage is still small compared to what is mass.
Okay.
So I'm glad that Amish is doing really well, or Chetan Bhagat, people are reading. But as long as for me people are reading, because it is the first step to go ahead and pick up a literary fiction at some point in their lifetime of reading. So I think that's very important.
Aditi, you coming from being a publisher who publishes in Hindi, how do you, because, and we are always, principally we've known that the majority of our population should be reading in Hindi. But there must be a huge gap between the should be and does it really happen? And how do you profile your readership then?
Well, it's a very complicated question, because despite knowing the fact that Hindi speaking public are far more than the English speaking public of our country, but the readership in Hindi is not as huge as the English readership. Maybe we have not been able to join the dots with when it comes to content management, when it comes to content delivery, when it comes to marketing our content. But that's also has got a lot to do with the aspiration of our country. India may dream in Hindi, may cry in Hindi, may sleep in Hindi, but it aspires in English today. So English, I mean, that's a reality and we all have to accept it. But given that fact, it doesn't take away the kind of tradition we've had in Hindi about book criticism, book discussion, locating the new reader, locating the new writers. Since the beginning of 20th century, we've had magazines like Sudha, Madhuri, talking about the new writers on the blog and reviewing their works. And it was very widely followed by a lot of people, and the books sold there. Okay. But it has somehow, I mean, the medium changes over a period of time, the people change, reading habits change, reading tastes change, and so has Hindi also changed. Today we are standing on a cross 22 situation, because we are trying to understand what exactly are people who are reading in Hindi trying to read. Because, for example, Mahasamar, that is a re-rendition of Mahabharata, which is published in 9 volumes, sells far more than a new writer on the blog. It was published, the first volume was published in 1988, and we still managed to sell 5,000 to 6,000 sets each year. So that's the, I mean, so it's in Hindi, I mean, if I call the Prachar Tantra, so to say, it's very different like the way, from the way it works in English. The book establishes itself, the author establishes himself or herself over a period of time. Because a Hindi reader can, what I have understood is that when I go to Patna Book Fair, for example, you cannot make a buzz around a book and sell a book there. There's a long tradition of understanding of what the author is about, from which school of thought he is coming, and that's how the books sell in Hindi. So Hindi ka पाठक बड़ा दबाऊ और बड़ा जुझारू पाठक होता है. So that's what I think about this.
But doesn't that also pose a challenge to you, given that there are lots of books in English that are selling a few lakh copies? I won't mention the writers, but we all know whom I'm talking about. What are you doing specially to make sure that there is a fill-up in sales figures for Hindi books, especially with more popular kind of writing?
Well, we park our bucks to get the returns, say after 10 years or 20 years, and that's why Hindi publication is more like a family managed business, because first generation sows the seeds and the second generation or third generation that I am and my cousin is here from Rajkamal, we all reap the fruits that our fathers and grandfathers probably foresaw that it may become big. But jokes apart, I think we have to strike a balance. When we know that Rag Darbari or Mahasamar sells, we have to make it more relevant for the younger lot. Like Vivek he just told me that he bought a whole set of Masamar last day or this morning.
Yes,
that's very nice. That's very nice. And but we also have to invest some marketing mechanism into the newer lot. So we have to make sure that they are on YouTube, we have to make sure that they are on Facebook, we have to make sure they are being talked about in the English newspapers as well. Hindi mein to hota hi hai, English wale bhi kuch cover kar. So we have to push our boundaries there.
Paul, you were running a bookstore for the last 30 years and more than that.
The store was opened in 1953, City Lights. It was founded by the poet Lawrence Ferlinghetti, and I've been working there since 1970. Yeah.
All right, so I've got my maths wrong
Yes.
there, sorry. But you are constantly following your readers' lives, and you're watching them, observing how reading patterns are changing. I'm very keen to know, you must be having lots of Asian readers, lots of people of color coming to buy books from you. What kind of books are they buying? And I also want to know, not just the reader of color, but are writers of color selling? And I'm not talking only about Indian writers,
Yes.
generally writers of color. How does the sales work for those, for both? I mean, what kind of readers and what kind of writers?
Well, for our specific store, what we do, we really do specialize in international literature in translation. So it's all in English, but it's been translated from many, many languages. So we're known for that, and we're known for our poetry collections. And so people come to find us. And so in the United States, the literary reader uses all the channels. They come to independent bookstores, they go online, and in some cases they go to some of the chains, depending on what they're looking for. But it is, right now, one of the issues that we have in the United States is that throughout the book industry, starting from independent booksellers and going to major corporate publishers, there's only 3% people of color. We're talking African Americans, East Asians, South Asians, Latinos of all types. And so we have changed the face of who gets published over the last 40 years, but we haven't changed how those decisions, and who makes those decisions. And where that becomes really crucial is that because of that class and race barrier, that many times publishers of all sizes really aren't aware of all the resources within individual communities. There are radio stations, there are small newspapers that maybe publish just once a month, but those are really a very good way of reaching very specific audiences as well as general audiences. So most of the marketing and publicity dollars go into mainstream general audiences. And so many times it takes a specific reading to make a specific community aware that the book is out there, because they're being missed in the general marketing thing. But having said that, there's a growing awareness among all readers in the United States at stores like City Lights and other independents around the United States for writers of all types. And I had the privilege of being on this year's DSC jury, so I'm very aware of the fact that there's a lot of astounding writing that is not available in the UK or the United States. A non-book of destruction is one example. I think, there is an audience out there. It wouldn't be big initially. We'd have to be patient. We'd have to work through a series of independent booksellers, and if we could work with Penguin India, that would be tremendous, both for the classics and the contemporaries. But I'll just mention one book, Anand's Book of Destruction, that was on the short list, that I believe a bookstore like City Lights could sell. And like this year's winner, Cyrus Mystery, his book right now is not available to an American or British reader because they're not published in that. That will change because Cyrus is just one, but it's just an example of how much we in the United States are missing of international literature, and specifically South Asian literature. And so there's a great wide world out there, and I think sometimes in the United States we misperceive the kind of curiosity and hunger for readers of all types to move beyond what they know or what they've been taught in school. And so it's one of the reasons why City Lights is just celebrated its 60th year, and the last 3 years have been our best 3 years in terms of gross sales. And it's because of the expanding knowledge of writing internationally and the changing nature of immigration into the United States, and it's like the American hyphenated writer, whether they're from Russia, whether they're from Japan, whether they're from India or Pakistan or Sri Lanka, that writer speaks to so many different audiences, like internationally and within the United States, because the United States is changing rapidly. I'm a third generation Japanese American, and then what our definition of Asian American was 40 years ago is totally different now. It's so much more diverse, it's so much richer, and it's when you go to something like the Asian American Film Festival in San Francisco 30 years ago when it started, it was pretty much Chinese, Filipino, Japanese, and now it's like the wide diversity of Southeast Asia, South Asia, and in parts of Oceania. So it enriches us so much as Americans, and so our dialogue is much richer. And for myself as a bookseller, there's just so much more access that speaks directly to all our experiences, and it's not just kind of speaking in an abstract way in a literary sense. So it's a really tremendously rich time. And so I'll just finish this portion. I'm on record as saying that this is the richest period in American literature in the last 5 years, and it has been since 1948, 1960, which is also a very rich period in American literature. So it's a very exciting time now. And our major problem is not the writing, but it's like kind of making the audience aware there, because I think there is a growing audience. The numbers won't be that large. You know, we're talking 5, 7, 6, 7,000, which I know in New York is not a number they're thrilled to hear, but that's a reality. But we can grow those numbers, and if everybody's realistic, the writer's realistic, the agent is realistic, and the bookseller is realistic, and we're patient, we can grow that. And I think City Lights is just one example of how that can be grown.
Shivapriya, I want you to forget for a minute that you're just publishing, you're handling a literary fiction list. I want you to answer this as a publisher, as Penguin. Publishers you're seeing all across in India making choices of the kind of content they want to put out in the market. So while we know that commerce is the bottom line, while we know that you have to give out to readers what they are asking, is there a conscious effort being made to put out in the market something that you want to guide the readers into reading? You know, that okay, you're used to reading popular fiction, but here is one book which is neither popular and nor literary. I'm just giving an example, but it's kind of crossover. And is there a conscious movement within the entire publishing industry that kind of effort to educate the reader's choices also has to be done, so that we have a kind of a larger vision for where our publishing goals are going to be achieved, in terms of upping the content editorially? A slightly complicated question, but you're getting what I mean.
I do get it, and as everybody's seen, to an extent, Penguin's list has changed. The composition of our list. I don't think we really had a commercial fiction list before, and we have a strong commercial fiction list now, and that's a bit strange in a company which has sort of specialized in literary and semi-literary kind of material. But what's happened is, along with publishing commercial writing like Durjoy Datta or Ravinder Singh, what they've done is they've given a space, and along with the commercial writing, the translations have grown to be really specific. These are the two lists that have really grown in terms of fiction. So there is definitely a conscious effort to balance out what we do, to get the money in one list and to give the readers what they want, and also to publish material that we think should be read and should be published. As to a conscious effort to educate readers, I'm very uncomfortable about something prescriptive like that. But I think the Penguin Classics is all about that, really, because it's not like we make huge numbers with it, but it is what we consider one of our flagship imprints, and we do invest quite heavily and in a very sustained manner in it.
Can one of you just tell them at the back to keep quiet? Sorry about that. No, I did not mean just, when I said educating the reader, I did not mean it in the way of it being didactic, that you should read only classics. I'm talking about the other range of books, that there is some very offbeat writing, but we know that it does not fall under commercial or literary. I'm coming to you as an agent right now because I fall in love with a very offbeat book, and I have to sit back and clench my teeth and say, but which publisher is going to be brave enough to do this? I'm talking about those kind of books, because they will definitely set another trend. They might even become cult books. But you know, I'm kind of limited and say, okay, I'm not submitting this because I know it's not going to sell. So for me also it becomes a commitment to an author. So that's my concern.
Nita, I'm not entirely clear what.
Like suppose there is a tale being told in verse. So we know Vikram Seth did it.
Yes.
But I'm scared to take on an author who's done something brilliant like that, because I know that none of you would like to bet your money on it.
I disagree. I think we do books that we love. It is a small percentage, but we do that.
Yeah.
Because I think we've taken risks with quite a few books this year.
I think we'll have a private conversation later.
There's just one thing that I wanted to address that that came up in Aditi's, which is that I think it's wonderful to hear that the Hindi publishers actually invest and think in the long run, because working for a trade publisher, I can tell you that long-term thinking is very, very difficult. These huge constraints. Inventory is very expensive, so the book and the stock has to actually move within the first 6 months, at the most 13 months.
So we're all battling with those challenges that we're facing. I'm going to come back to Vivek. Vivek, the culture of which the internet has spawned, of e-publishing, of reading online, and I'm not talking about shopping online right now, but I'm coming to you as a blogger. I feel, and I can also be blamed for being very old school right now. I find today's reader, the younger reader, having a problem of attention. There is this whole thing about micro-attention. And the two recent examples that are just coming to my mind is that I myself am representing Twitter Mahabharat. The whole Mahabharat has been told in Bhim's voice, and it's a series of tweets, and it's getting published. The next project that I was looking at was this whole concept of, they've come to me with terribly tiny tales. Within the first month of them launching themselves online, they had 17,000 followers in a month, which is not a bad figure. And it's just a pool of writers who are putting out tales in forms of tweets, one tale a day per writer. Right? So, how has readership been affected by the internet, with blogging, with this kind of short attention span, or did we already have it and it's just becoming more obvious to us?
So, I think it's not been affected at all. It's just different ways, different forms of reading. If there's a terribly tiny tales, you also have an author venturing out and probably translating and writing The Mirror of Beauty, which is about 700 or 800 pages long, and people read both. So in no way has reading been impacted, or the fact that it's because it is micro or online, has it been distracted by any way. I think it's just a matter of choice, to be very honest. At the end of it all, it's just about whether you read a terribly tiny tale or Bhim's tale in tweets, or for that matter an article online or a short story online. It's just up to you. So I wouldn't say it really distracts or impacts anything. I think it's just about coexisting, right? You have various forms of reading, various forms of writing, and they all live happily ever after.
Yeah, but today, just in a conventional sense, if you pick up a reader who's between the age group of 25 to 28 or 20 to 30, largely speaking, and you give him an option of picking up The Mirror of Beauty, thick volume, and say, but this is a short story by the same writer. What do you think is going to happen?
I think maybe if he or she reads a short story, they would be tempted enough to pick up The Mirror of Beauty.
I hope it happens like that.
And it will. And it will. I'm very hopeful about reading. Yes, I think it will. Yeah.
I'd like to add on to it. What we are doing at Vani right now, for example, is Laghu Prem Katha, Laprek, which is a love story in 5 to 6 lines. And people like Ravish Kumar and Vineet who are considered to be one of the serious thought process makers in Hindi these days, younger ones, they've contributed to this series. And it's yet to be produced in the World Book Fair, coming World Book Fair, and it all happened on Facebook. They were writing these breaks on Facebook. So it got picked up from there, and now we are turning them into books. That's nice, that's amazing.
I think sometimes we kind of overly generalize the readers, and I think the readers really, what we experience, particularly readers between 15 and 35, are really on multiple platforms, multiple channels, and I don't think it's our experience at City Lights that because they're online and reading some of these micro-blogs of flash fiction, is that they're also picking up things like Roberto Bolaño's Savage Detectives or David Foster Wallace, and so they're looking at a wide range of work, and I think it doesn't behoove us in the trade, you know, on the business side of the book world, to kind of overly generalize our readers, and I think it is most effective if we can actually reach out and respect our readers and kind of say there is potential there to kind of get even the most difficult works, and and that's kind of the basis of our success. And so one of the things that the privilege of Bookseller has is you get to see every day readers surprised and delighted coming in and find a whole range of material, and so I guess I have not a better perspective, but a more immediate perspective on kind of the delight that so many readers have. That I think it takes longer for people in publishing to kind of get that feedback.
No, but I'm sure, Shinapri, you must be getting a lot of feedback from a few readers of your translation list, or is there anything specific that's stuck in your head in terms of rebound from the readers?
No, not really. I decided that it truly is amazing that people are reading all kinds of books. Maybe the kind of feedback I get is usually, I love that book, thank you for publishing it, thank you for having it translated from Marathi or Urdu or something like that. But not about size or content. They're just very grateful that there's exciting work, there's work that you don't normally find being translated and published.
Okay, it's been bothering me a while, also because I'm coming to you as a mother now. I have a 13-year-old who does not like to read. So he's made to sit down every day and no, you have to read from so and so time to so and so time. You pick what you want, but read, it's very important. And I was talking to a few students of the 11th grade some days back, and this boy tells me, and it disturbed me a lot, I like reading Dickens. Very impressed. I said, wow, 11th grader has the patience to read Dickens, but it was dispelled in a second. I like reading Chetan Bhagat. And I said, what do you write about Dickens? I don't have a problem with anyone reading Chetan, just to set the record straight. As long as, for me, a reader is a reader is a reader. It's like you're reading, very good. That's exactly where I'm coming from right now. But I said, what do you like about Dickens? I like the way he describes his scenes, and that poor boy fell into the trap because I caught him lying straight out. What disturbs me is because he must have felt that he needs to portray himself as this intellectual reader. There is this horrible culture of peer pressure.
Of fake reading.
Of fake reading.
Yeah.
I want each of yours opinions on that, and how do we handle that? You. So, who wants to take this on?
So, okay, here's the deal. He may have lied to you about reading Dickens, but after being grilled, I hope he goes and picks up a Dickens and reads it. Even if it's a short one like Oliver Twist or Hard Times, he should.
I did not preach to him. I just kept quiet after that. I was just
okay.
trying to.
On a more serious note,
yeah.
I think yes, there's a lot of peer pressure. There's a lot of social media pressure on what to read, what not to read, on being ostracized by what you're reading or by judging people what they are reading. I think that needs to go. I think people should, of course, a reader is a reader is a reader, right? Like you said, you choose what you read. You don't like something, you leave it midway. 100 pages is all I can handle. That's it. That happened to me with The Lord of the Rings. I haven't read it, and it's all right. But people tell me, "Oh my God, you haven't read Lord of the Rings." I'm like, yes, so what? Big deal. I haven't read
We
it.
come from the same bed.
So my deal is, I mean, you know, they are compelled to be fake readers because they want to prove a point because of the pressure. It's got nothing to do with, you know, them being comfortable. Maybe they're not comfortable. They need to be made comfortable. It's okay, you read what you want as long as you're reading.
But do you face that among your readers?
Yes, I think it's also true that has always been the case. I remember in the late 60s that, you know, that if you were going to have credibility among a certain group, you had to be seen carrying volume 1 of Capital, or you didn't have any credibility. So I think that's always been the case, but I think there is so much work out there, both contemporary and work that's been written over the centuries, that none of us, even if all of us collectively were one big reading machine, that we would encompass, you know, what we call the canon in several lifetimes. So I tell the younger booksellers, simply do not be afraid to say, I haven't read that, or I'm not aware of it, because there is so much out there. You know, just our house gets smaller every day because of the stacks of unread books that are kind of piling up. But these are books we want to read, but will we ever get to them? We don't know. You know? So it's that whole process. So I don't think any of us should be kind of embarrassed about what we haven't read, whether they're classics or contemporary works, because there is so much. It's a particularly rich time right now. And it's, so we just say, I haven't read it.
Even with your, I'm talking about the younger generation who is still reading in Hindi, hoping that they are still reading in Hindi. What is your take on this?
Well, the younger lot that is attending undergraduation, if you're talking about them, my experience so far has been, if I go to say Lucknow Book Fair or Patna Book Fair or Gorakhpur Book Fair for that matter, the reactions would range from "Kya chhapa hai aapne" to "Kya chhapa hai aapne." So the Hindi readers are very vocal, very vocal, and I think that's the best bit. I mean, they would come the next year and they say, we didn't like that book, it's not properly edited, it had typos, and they would come the next year and say, mind blowing stuff, बहुत ही बढ़िया, मजा आ गया पढ़ के, ये कब इनकी अगली कब आ रही है. So I think it's more related to the tradition of reading in our country, and that's where the topic, the geographies of reading was. I was working on my thesis around it.
Yeah.
So it is about the land that gives rise to a particular kind of reader. In my premise is that, for example, a Rag Darbari or a Chaurangi would not be born if we interchange their landscape, and so would the reader. I mean, I can speak about the Hindi reader because my maximum interaction is with them. They are the most vocal people. I mean, they would just tell you they don't like the book, they like the book, what they like, what didn't they like. And this whole idea of being seen with the book doesn't exist there. Because the idea there, because there's such strong tradition of public culture, public debate in Hindi, that they would rather be seen speaking about it. They would rather be seen debating about it. They would not mind not having been seen with a particular book. I don't think so. Visibility
that's very heartening to know, because at least somebody is saved. But Shivapriya, what about you? I'm sure you've come across a lot of people because you're in the heart of the publishing industry, which is in Delhi, and you're going to all these book events, and you know lots of books are being launched and all. And I'm sure you're coming across a lot of readers who have these kind of polarizations. What's your experience been like?
Actually, I don't meet up because I kind of do these very literary books. I don't get to meet readers, or at least I don't really interact so much with readers who, who are not doing the same thing, which is what I mean by, I think the composition of literary readership has remained more or less the same. It's always a small percentage, but it's a very loyal percentage. As to, reading is such a peculiar thing. 3 of my 4 grandparents read, and both my parents read, and I read, really passionately, and my sister doesn't read it. Perhaps it's something, it is a sentiment.
It is a sentiment, completely.
So perhaps it's all right for people not to read too.
Oh, it's absolutely all right. I mean, it's a personal choice.
Perhaps I shouldn't say that as a publisher and as somebody who's sitting here as part of the trade. But I do believe it's all right not to read. And it's all right to read all kinds of things. And at some point, hopefully, people will get curious about some of the amazing things writers write. and will read, and we should work on, tempting people into reading. But I'm absolutely fine if people don't read.
Okay, which gets me to the cosmetic part, again because you do literary fiction. So in India at least, and I know you're going to just get very angry with me when I say this, but publishers here, I've noticed, when it comes to publishing literary fiction, and especially the hardcover, their book jackets are beautifully done. But when you look at the book jackets of mass market, they are the saddest part in design. And those are the books that are actually selling. Now, whatever you say, a attractively designed book jacket does its bit to sell that book. Yeah, but then why do we have this discrepancy? Why can't the same amount of money be invested in designing a mass market book jacket cover properly? Like, you do realize what I'm talking about. When you're stepping into a bookstore, and forgive me for saying this, but I don't mean to be critical only of my country. I'm immensely proud as an Indian. Just before somebody murders me for what I'm saying. But you step into a bookstore in the US and it's first of all a delight to the eyes because of the tremendous superiority of design and production quality. I'm sure you know what I'm saying, and you have to admit that I'm right.
I actually don't. I think we invest and think about all kinds of covers equally, I promise you, because we sit in, cover meetings, even if I'm not working on commercial books. I sit in covers meetings where all kinds of covers are decided. The budget is more or less the same. The designers are more or less, yes, they are. We might have amazing covers for the Mirror of Beauty or Cobalt Blue, but we have beautiful covers for paperbacks too. Goat Days, the Book of Destruction, they were as carefully thought out as anything else.
Bankrupt for that matter.
Right, and also for commercial books, you need to design it in a certain way that readers immediately get that this is in that genre. That this is a thriller or a romantic novel. For example, in all of Ravinder's books, we have a heart. Just to, it's a code, and to do it.
That's exactly. It's a heart. We know he's writing romance. That's the cliche thing to do.
When I'm on a flight or on a train journey, I don't want to read The Goldfinch with a beautiful cover. I want to read Bankrupt because it breezes me through my journey. So why not? If the cover is telling me that this is what it is, murder, and this is what scandal and conspiracy, I will pick it out.
And all these books will have a man in a coat with a suitcase, sort of in,
running somewhere.
Distance, yes.
Would you like to say what Paul and
I mean, for Hindi books in general, it's more of an extract that has been in for a while. If you bar aside Gulshan Nandas, have the most explicit covers possible. But for example, when we publish Gulzar Saab, we have to get Gopi Gajrani Saab on board to do the whole artwork. But when we are doing popular fiction, then we can play around a bit. We can take it a little light. But we don't do discrimination between hardcovers and the paperbacks. They carry the same cover, the same layout.
Paul, do you have a take on this?
Well, in the United States, it's pretty similar. It's just like, the budgets are the same, but, the design is reflected towards what the publisher considers certain types of readerships. And so mass markets or books that are aimed for larger readership will be what you might consider more gaudy. Just they'll have more embossed and raised letters. And sometimes publishers, when they're trying to kind of straddle various different reading types, can add an element of fusion. So they'll try to do elements of a more popular type of book, as well as kind of what the jackets like for literary fiction, and that sometimes works and sometimes does not work. It can be disastrous. But I think that seems to be pretty universal. Just that we look at various particular types of readers, and we try to design jackets for that particular audience. And so, like when you walk into a bookstore, what the romance thing's in, and where the literary fictions are, what serious nonfiction works. But that seems like the same to me.
We also have a proliferation of readers going up for nonfiction. books. So there's this whole demand, and I know it's not your list, but this whole demand for mind, body, soul kind of books, self-help. There's a whole, there's a real big jump in sales figures for even business books, and we are seeing a jump in sales for creative non-fiction, which is like a racier read than the seriously researched non-fiction like Ram Guha also, but then they will still manage to sell those large numbers. But this non-fiction readership, where do you think this is coming from? Because till about 6 or 7 years back, everyone was just, generally you would come across people just picking up fiction. So what is it that has brought about this change according to all of you?
Well, I think I really don't have that much to say about, because at City Lights we don't really fish in that sea. You know, generally if a book has an announced print run of over 100,000, it's really questionable if we're actually going to carry the book. And it's not because of the quality of the book, but we feel that a book with a large announced print run will have a large and wide distribution. And we feel our role at City Lights is to take those mid-list books and books from university presses and smaller presses to kind of bring them to the attention of readership. And you know, the fact that we've been there for 60 years kind of demonstrates that there is more potential readers out there than sometimes we give readers credit for. And so, like, it really is about what we were talking about discoverability yesterday.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, if you're able to present it, even the most challenging fiction and the most kind of dense nonfiction, you will find readers for that. It is really making it available to them and making people awareness. It's that level of awareness that a lot of times people don't know that a certain book even exists until they walk into a bookstore and kind of, that looks interesting, and you pull it off the shelf. And so that really doesn't answer your question, but I really don't have it because we really don't carry those kind of books.
But what about you? Can you just quickly tell us your views about the proliferation of non-fiction, and then we'll open it to the house for questions.
Well, non-fiction, I feel it's a kind of intellectual extension from what people are getting from magazines and newspapers. With Hindi, it has been like that. Whether it is about Indo-Pak insurgencies or about 9/11 or more contemporary issues around Aam Aadmi Party, the non-fiction bit would take the whole debate to another level, and that's where it sells. Because the readers, when they're watching the television, when they are reading newspapers, they do understand that it's half-baked thing, and the non-fiction kinds of cements this gap. With Hindi, it has been like that. But English, I can say what we are.
We both have to speak.
I agree with whatever they said.
You know, I think in the case of non-fiction, this is purely speculative. I just think that fiction is it's a very specialized kind of reading, whether it's commercial or literary, and therefore I think it, you know, do you want to listen to stories? I guess most people do, but they can do it, you know, you can watch movies, you can watch television, and you can get your day storytelling. But I think with non-fiction, you know, you don't need that kind of, you don't need to listen or, you know, read in a, I think the demands are very different than fiction. So therefore I think with non-fiction, it's, there's also a thirst for information, a thirst for knowledge, and you get to know about different things in the world. So I guess that's, but there's definitely a growth, and I think in fact most publishers' budgets, at least in English, are made with non-fiction, not with fiction. Fiction is a small percentage of our lists.
I think, of course, so we sell a lot of fiction on Flipkart, but at the same time there's a good mix of that and non-fiction as well, though it's a little less. But I think it's got to do more with, like she said, you know, what's in the news. What is it that people want to know more about? A movie on a famous person comes out and the book is available, so they would love to go and buy the book, like in the case of The Wolf of Wall Street. So you have to stock it, you have to keep it ready. So I think that is also something that influences people's reading taste when it comes to non-fiction.
Yeah, and sometimes we use it as a trick, especially as parents. I use it all the time. let's watch the movie, then I'll get you the book. Not that it works every time, but sometimes. Don't you think? I think we have to keep trying our level best to get our youngsters to read. But with that, I'm going to open the house for questions.
Mine is just a short response, not a question to what Meeta has been talking about non-fiction. I'm not a young reader, definitely, but the kind of non-fiction which is now available in the very simple form, the contemporary, let's say, thinkers of today, Malcolm Gladwell, Steven Levitt, Why Go Far, Professor Sendel, Moral Limits of Markets, Penguins published it. Very simple books. Serious contemporary questions in a very, very simple narrative. Professor Sendel is today called a rockstar philosopher. After all, he is a hardcore philosopher. He teaches government at Harvard University for the last 30 years. But for many of us who've listened to him here, I've been following him on his blog online. Very simple, participative. So I feel the non-fiction has become very simple in approach. Raising serious issues has become participative, and this catches the attention. When I talk to a lot of young people who love to read, everybody's read Blank, Outlier, Gladwell, etc. And then they can probably also go, if I then ask them a question, how about Nicholas Taleb? Have you read, let's say, The Black Swan? So they said, well, it's a little more difficult, but we would like to. So I think the non-fiction, the people who are catching attention have become very simple in approach. That's my view.
This question is actually for Ms. Meeta. It seems to me the answer to all of your challenges as such is self-publishing. And this actually is also a question for Ms. Sirapriya. What has Penguin done for self-publishing? Amazon seems to have a vision, and they have done a lot for self-publishing industry. Or India as such doesn't seem to have this self-publishing scene. So do you think self-publishing can actually answer all of our woes as such?
First of all, I don't know what your woes are, but self-publishing is not the only answer. It is one of the answers, I would say, and I won't say that there's not much happening. There is a steady growth in self-publishing in India, and Flipkart is helping that, as obviously Amazon. And so is Penguin with Partridge. They have an imprint which Shivapriya can tell you more about.
Actually, not very much, other than that we do have an imprint, and people can self-publish through that imprint.
So, but depends on what you're writing, what genre, why is it not catching a publisher's attention. So it's not exactly that you're suffering. There are solutions, and self-publishing is not the only solution. Though it's doing pretty good, it's doing very well. So we're not going to say it's good or bad, but you can sort yourself out.
Hi, I have two questions. The first is for Mahesh Wadiji. So far the panel has talked about translation as it relates to English, and then works from the classics into English. But could you tell me about translation from English or other Indian vernacular languages into Hindi, and how that reflects upon contemporary Hindi tastes and the reading public? The second question I have for Skylight is that my experience in the US has been that when I go into a place like Barnes & Noble and I look at some of the works from other countries, I see works of Russian literature, Japanese literature, like you said, Roberto Bolaño, people from Chile. And whenever it's Indian literature, it's English Indian literature. And I found very few translations from Hindi on the bookshelves. And I would want, if you could comment on that, that would be fantastic as well.
Well,
Okay.
please.
Well, the first point is they are not vernaculars, they are national languages. Second point is there's a lot happening between Indian languages right now, and it's a very good time to do it. We are doing a lot from Malayalam, a lot from Bangla, a lot from Assamese, a lot from Rajasthani, Bhojpuri, Marathi, Tamil, as well as Punjabi. And they are all coming into Hindi. The idea is that the readership and the geographical readership of Hindi is so huge that a Taslima Nasreen ceases to be a Bangla author and she becomes our own Hindi. That Pandupuram ceases to be a Malayali text and becomes the Hindi text. So a lot is happening within Hindi and vis-a-vis the international and Indian languages at the same time. You didn't ask it, but I'd like to tell you that all the Scandinavian languages, all the European languages have a representation and a very good one in Hindi. We are about to publish Persepolis in Hindi now. Judith is here, and that goes. I mean, I would be the proudest woman standing in the Hindi heartland and saying, here is Persepolis in Hindi. So a lot is happening there.
Just to address the second part of your question, is that a lot of the Indian languages and translations are not available in the US. So like the Penguin Contemporaries, for example, and like, you know, I mentioned the Anand Book of Destruction again, is not available to me as a bookseller in the United States. And so that's one of the principal reasons. And I think there is a critical distinction between Barnes and Noble and the chains and independents, where you'll see a much greater diversity at many independents than you will of international languages translated into English than you will at Barnes and Noble, for example.
Hi, my question is to Vivek.
Hi.
Vivek, I must compliment you first for Flipkart. You're doing an amazing thing.
Thank you.
Is there any plan for expanding it? Let me contextualize my question. I come from J&K region. You have reached Srinagar. Thank you. Is there any plans to go beyond?
I'm sure there are. I'm not aware of those. But I will get back to you on this one.
Thank you.
He needs to get the approval.
Yes, no approval. And I will let you know for
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
And thank you for liking us.
Hi, I'd just like to ask you, are you seeing any particular regions of India increasing in terms of readership? And which ones are they? And what particular things are they reading?
So the reading experience, or what they read, is very expansive, right? You cannot put a finger on it. But the regions that, so I think more or less all regions read, but except for the interiors. So there I think we need to make our presence felt a little more, so that you reach out and, you know, let people know that there is a platform where you can buy and read books, and it can just be delivered to you. So with that, yes. But they are reading a whole lot of stuff. I think a lot of mass market books are being read. A lot of literary fiction is also being read, though the percentage might be less, but I think they are reading those. Non-fiction, business, music, about films, entertainment. So it's just a long list.
Are you done? My question is to Sivapriya. What about Indian authors? We are tagging them as authors who write just on romance, and when I visit bookstores, I actually do. I don't order, I mean I do order on Flipkart, but I visit bookstores as well. Sorry. And there's a whole shelf filled with the books. It is flooded in the market. What about, how do we protect the image of Indian authors? As in,
read them. Read more of them.
Yeah, exactly.
I do. There's so much less of Marathon Baba and Law Story, but there's so much of Ravinder Singh and Joy Lata. Why so? How do we influence the readership?
Can I join you here? Why does Flipkart have, why the party for Indian languages books on Flipkart is over?
So
I mean,
it isn't over and we had that conversation.
Did it ever begin? Like properly?
It began, I'm sure it did.
It did. At least we tried to believe that it did. But they're just not uploading the whole catalogue anymore.
Not the entire catalogue.
I mean, not they, I mean his company, but he's a reader here, we know.
The part of it has been uploaded.
See, that's why part of it, why part of it? They're giving you the whole stock list, why aren't you putting it up there? There are readers out there.
We'll talk about it.
I think you need to have a beer together, both of you, after the session. But Shivapriya,
yes. You know, I'm not entirely sure if we need to protect the Indian reader or the image of the Indian reader, because this phenomenon of mass market books is actually quite new, in English at least. And it's good people are reading, and we're actually selling huge numbers of copies, and that means we can publish what could be considered more obscure books. it actually gives us the money to do, say, 4 more translations of a book of destruction, which it's really quite an amazing book, dense, philosophical, and therefore is not going to sell huge numbers, though he's hugely respected and people who read the book are quite blown by it. And also, if you think about it, Ravinder and Durjoy are quite new on the scene. We've been known for our Vikram Seths and our Arundhati Roys, and so it's good.
Can I just say something? I shouldn't be speaking as a moderator, but I can't resist myself. There is nothing wrong with the image of our Indian writers. They're all in their niche genres are doing very well for themselves and have fantastic images attached to them. They're all respected, and for you as a reader, it's for you to make the effort to actually go into the bookstore and discover what you want to read. Okay, you need to really put your mind to that and say, okay, I don't want to read Ravinder Singh or Durjoy Datta, but what is it that I can find that I will like? So explore, get into the aisles, look beyond the piles and find. That is the joy of discovering a good book which is going to be your mate for life. That's how I discover my books. And that's what a reader should do. And that's what I'm sure everyone, all publishers, that's where we are all coming from. Find a book that you want to read. Period. Are we done? Sorry, I had the last word. I shouldn't have.
Do you want to say something more to end the session from your side? You want to wrap up the session?
All of you, a line each? Or there is one more question. Can we take one more question? No?
Book launch.
There's a book launch here. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Like the book launch is here.
Okay, so that's a lovely way to end and start the new thing. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much on this wonderful session, insight into the publishing world, and I'm sure we will get books of our choice. They will publish more books of our choice, and we will read and go on with the reading and with the literature festival. Thank you so very much for being here. Now we are ready, as you can see, the book launch. People are here. Namita is here. Namita is going to launch her book here, Traveling In, Traveling Out.